and welcome to the 11th Congressional District Candidate Forum, sponsored by the Mountaineer, the Silver Herald, and the Cherokee One-Feather. Republicans Linda Bennett of Haywood County and Madison Cawthorn from Henderson County were the top two vote getters in the March primary election, but in a field of 12 candidates, neither secured the necessary 30% for a win. A runoff race on June 23rd will determine who represents the Republican Party against the Democratic nominee, Mo Davis of Buncombe County. District residents who are registered Republicans or who are unaffiliated and chose the Republican ballot in March, as well as unaffiliated voters who did not vote in March, are eligible to vote in the upcoming campaign. Absentee ballots to vote by mail can be requested through local election boards through June 16th. Early absentee voting begins June 4th, so check your local newspaper to see the dates, times, and places for that. Or voters could wait until Election Day and vote on June 23rd. Both candidates were invited to participate in this forum, but Bennett declined the offer. We are joined today by Madison Cawthorn, who we thank for taking the time to answer those hard questions journalists are known to have. So let's get started, and we'll just allow you to start with your opening statement, Madison.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to thank everyone who is here in attendance, but especially the three news outlets who have really put this together. It really means a lot that you're assisting us in making sure we're getting the message out to all of the different constituents in North Carolina 11. I've often said that I believe that this campaign is nothing but a long-form job interview that we are doing with the people of Western North Carolina. And I would like to be as accessible as humanly possible to the people of North Carolina 11 while still being safe amid this COVID-19 crisis. But I do believe that showing up to a debate or a forum like this is practically showing up to have a job interview. And I'm showing up because I want the job. This is something that I don't believe is owed to me, not something that I believe to be handed to me, but rather something that I want to win upon my own merits, and I want your support as the voters of North Carolina 11. I'm really looking forward to being able to field some questions. I believe that it is absolutely necessary to a free republic to make sure that we have a very open, transparent, and honest news media. And, it's protected within inside of our Bill of Rights. And I really just believe that all of us in North Carolina share the same common values. We want America to be the best it can be, and so I am very honored to get to sit before all of you today and get to answer the hard questions so you can all get to know what my policies are and where I stand. I believe it's very important that people always come forward and get to ask the questions that need to be asked, because integrity, honesty, and transparency, I believe, are extremely important in having a congressman. And so I hope that I can gain your support for the North Carolina 11th congressional seat. Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. The first question, by the way, these were questions submitted by all three of our meeting partners, and ironically, many of them were similar. So we've got 15 questions for you.
All right.
The first one is, both you and Linda Bennett have made it clear that you are staunch conservatives. Can you name any policy issues where you differ? And if so, what are those issues, and how do your perspectives differ?
It's very difficult for me to be able to answer that question, and the main reason is because I'm not exactly sure what my opponent's policy issues are. Although we are inside of this difficult time of COVID-19, she has nothing more than talking points and platitudes to be able to say. While my campaign has been busy publishing policy statements, different lengthy papers explaining our positions on different issues, my opponent has been busy just posting videos of learning how to shoot a gun for the first time, or learning how to garden and show her flowers. And at the end of the day, I don't think that's what America needs right now. We are in an unprecedented crisis, and so I wish I could sit before you today and explain to you what I believe the differences in our policies are. What I can say that I believe is a major difference is one that my policies are not just skin deep. They're not as deep as a puddle, but rather they have a lot of backing and a lot of support behind them. I don't read them off a piece of paper like they're a memorized talking point. Rather, I rely on study and my heartfelt desires for this country. So,
thank you. If elected, what legislation specific to the 11th district would you like to introduce?
I think the biggest thing that we need to push for, and I'm not sure that it needs a necessary piece of legislation, but is working on to make sure we have a large number of payment in lieu of taxes, our PILT money. As you know, many of our counties in this district have a large amount of national forests, which means that those counties are not able to receive all the taxes they would normally receive from those lands, and so it's hard for them to be able to make their budget, to be able to afford money. I was really honored to get to work on Congressman Charles Taylor's campaign while I was growing up. He was the first person to ever take me to Washington, D.C., and he was great. But as I've grown older, I've really realized what an incredible congressman he was. He worked so hard to make sure we have the best VA in the nation, and he also made sure that our PILT money was very substantial so that our counties could provide the necessary resources they needed to have a thriving economy. And so that's something that I would like to mirror from Congressman Taylor.
Thank you. You've said the nation's growing debt is a concern to you. Tell us about your long-term plan to address the national debt.
Well, thank you. I believe it's a two-pronged approach. One, we have got to balance our budget. And now a lot of people say they want to put a balanced budget amendment onto the Constitution. I think I may be for that. There would have to be some kind of writing in there that allowed us to take emergency debt for a time of crisis like we are in COVID-19 or for a time of war. But I believe we've got to take care of our debt or our debt is going to handle us. It's a 900-pound lion that's asleep on the floor, and eventually it's going to wake up and it's going to be hungry. And so my plan for that is very similar to Senator Rand Paul's penny plan. And I would like to cut down on our welfare type state and all of the entitlements that we give away to people in our country and in foreign aid, by 2 or 3% a year so that it can wean the American people off of these entitlements. I don't want to cut people off of entitlements on the very first day, but I would like the American people to learn to stand on their own so that way we can be able to address the national debt.
And a second part to that question was the additional debt taken on to address the coronavirus pandemic ill-advised?
It depends which particular piece of legislation that you're talking about. If you're talking about Nancy Pelosi's plan to introduce $3 trillion and to add on to our national debt, I think that is ludicrous and it's way too extreme. But I do believe that the immediate relief that we gave to people was very necessary because, unlike in 2008 when we had a stimulus package that went out then, this was not caused because of anyone's poor financial mistakes or poor business dealings. This was caused because of a government-mandated shutdown. And so I truly believe that it's absolutely necessary for the government to step in and help protect those small businesses because these are businesses that people have put their entire livelihoods on the line to build. And so, I've often heard from many people, and I echo it myself, we don't want a stimulus check. I just don't want to watch my friends' businesses get shut down. And I want people to be able to get their paychecks. So I think the Paycheck Protection Program and the initial stimulus checks that were sent out were a good deal.
Thank you. The coronavirus pandemic has dealt a crippling blow to the nation. How do you believe we should move forward, balancing the concerns of all of our residents?
I think that's a great question. I believe, the left is sort of painting a narrative that it's a binary choice. We are either these capitalistic reptilians who say, oh, we care about jobs over lives, or we're people who care about the lives of the American people. But I believe that it's possible to have a two-pronged approach where you both protect the most in danger in our society, the elderly, people with pre-existing conditions like myself, but you also are able to have a structured reopening of our economy. To be able to shut the entire economy down for a death rate, which is, it's argued if it's a 3% or a 1% death rate, I believe that is a little too extreme of an action to take. So I believe we do need to open our country up forward. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay, perfect.
The fifth one, since the first primary, you have criticized the support your opponent has gained from super PACs and said that you will not be beholden to DC insiders, their super PACs, or any caucus chair. How do you feel about your support from the Protect Freedom PAC?
So that is a PAC that is ran by Senator Rand Paul, and I believe that my opponent worked very hard to make sure that she had as much outside support coming in, big name endorsements, a lot of super PAC money. She had to make a lot of deals with these people. I will tell you that my campaign and myself, we have never solicited a dollar from any super PAC or from any person outside of Western North Carolina, because we truly believe that we want to be supported by the people here in Western North Carolina. And so to answer your questions, this is not a deal I made with them beforehand. This is not something I asked them for, but rather this is something that they just gave on their own accord. When I was reading on their bio, it says that they're looking for candidates who can reach an unreached people group, different minority classes and inner city areas, people that Republicans traditionally struggle in. And so I believe that their PAC just saw inside of our messaging and me as a candidate that I may be able to bring a dynamic face to the Republican Party. And I believe that's why they're supporting me. But I will not be beholden to them. I do not feel like I owe them anything.
Thank you. This is your first effort to hold public office, correct? What made you decide to kickstart your political career at the congressional level?
You know, I get this question a lot. If you look in the Federalist paper, I believe number 52 by James Madison, he stated how the reason they wanted the House of Congress to be so accessible, to have the standards so low for people to be able to get in. You know, you just have to be 25 years old, be a U.S. citizen for 7 years, and live in the state for which you're running to represent. I mean, those are a pretty easy criteria to have. And the reason that he stated in this Federalist paper for having that is because he wanted this to be the most representative form of the Congress that there could be, as close to the people that it could be. And so I think that's why I'm running at such a young age, because I don't really think there's any time to wait. You know, I was really disappointed in the Republican Party back in 2016 when we got the House, we got the Senate, and we had the presidency. I expected to see sweeping changes come across our country and the Constitution to come roaring back. But what I saw was just a lot of people just moving slowly and lethargically. And so that really gave me a desire to run for office, because I know that I'll put the interests of my people first.
Tell us about the experience you have that qualifies you to be a member of U.S. Congress.
I think that's a great question. Number one is that I'm a small business owner, and my opponent touts the fact that she's a small business owner all the time. But it's not difficult to be a small business owner. Yes, you have to make a lot of sacrifices, and yes, it takes a lot of courage to do so. But there are thousands of business owners, many who are much more successful than myself or my opponent. What I believe really qualifies me to be a representative for Western North Carolina is my charisma, my courage to be able to stand up in front of people and to answer any questions that they have, my willingness to be a representative and not a politician, and my persuasiveness, because I believe that we need to send someone to Washington who is going to be a weapon in the hands of Western North Carolina. I don't want to go up there to just be another rank and file member of Congress. I want to go up there to make sweeping changes that will benefit the people of Western North Carolina, because this is where I'm from. I was raised in these mountains, I was educated in these mountains, and these are the mountains I plan to represent.
Thank you. What have you been doing to gain knowledge about the legislative process and the 11th Congressional District that you will need to have an impactful freshman term?
Well, I believe that's a great question. My basic steps are that I have an excellent group of mentors that I rely on. You know, I've been talking to Congressman Charles Taylor, Congressman Heath Schuler a lot about the process. I was fortunate enough to get to work as a staffer in Mark Meadows' campaign office, and so I understand the process, not just his campaign office, but his district office. So I understand the needs of constituent services. I understand what a congressman does day to day. I have a great grasp of what happens inside of a congressional office, unlike my opponent does. And so things that I've really been doing is I'm a voracious reader. I love reading just about any book. I read many books, especially the books that our founding fathers were reading. It's kind of a classical education. And so I've been looking back on those things like John Locke's The Social Contract, which talks about the contract that a government makes with its people, that the governed makes with the governed. And because I believe that's what I want to enter in, a social contract with the people of the United States, that I am there to represent you. All I want to do is make sure you don't get shot at, and that you have trade deals which enable you to make a lot of money. So that's all I believe the federal government needs to do.
Thank you. Congressman Meadows visited Cherokee on multiple occasions, and he had one of his staff members come to the Qualamon Foundry on a regular basis. If you were to hold this seat, how would you build a relationship with the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians?
I believe I'd build that relationship just like I would with anyone else in Western North Carolina. I would go there, be willing to answer their questions, but not just be there to answer their questions, because I will say that I am smart enough to know that I don't know everything. I want to put together an advisory council that represents every single culture and every single industry inside of our district so that I can rely on their support, because I believe decisions should come from where the information is. I don't want to sit there and act like I have all the answers. I believe that's one of the great things about my youth, is that I'm humble enough to say that I don't know everything. What do you think is the best course of action? What do you need as a people? And so I plan to make sure that I have the best constituent services in the entire country. I want to have a large amount of my staff here in Western North Carolina so that we can serve the people of Western North Carolina, because that's what I'm running to do. I don't want to be a politician that is running just to enrich myself or make sure I have a cushy retirement plan. I want to go up there to work and fight on our behalf.
And I think you answered my ninth question with that too, so we can skip that one.
All right.
You say the Republican Party for too long has been the party of no when it comes to health care. So tell us, how would the nation's healthcare system look if your ideas could be implemented?
Well, this is something I'm very passionate about. You know, I've been on the receiving side of healthcare in our nation for a very long time. I've been kind of the prime example of what a healthcare consumer is. And so I'm able to see the crushing weight that our healthcare costs have upon our people. When I came out of the hospital when I was 18 years old, I had over $3 million in medical debts. And that was a crush, especially at 18 years old. I was sitting there wondering, how in the world am I going to pay for this? What can I do? How can I have a future? And that is something that I don't want for any American. And a lot of times people sit back and will say, oh, wow, I thought he was conservative. I bet he's about to propose socialized health care. But rather, I am pushing for the exact opposite of that. I believe that we have got to have more free market capitalism inside the industry of healthcare. You know, there's a virtual monopoly held on North Carolina by Blue Cross and Blue Shield, which I believe makes artificially high healthcare costs that I think have got to be changed. And so I want to introduce more competition to the market, deregulate the market in a lot of ways, and create more price transparency so that these people are having to compete for our dollars rather than just telling us how much they want to charge us.
Thank you. You have spoken extensively about how hard you fought to persevere following your accident. What's another trying experience you've endured, and what did you learn from that?
I'll tell you another trying experience I have endured is this campaign, actually. You know, I have learned in this short season of politics that I've been in is that people will say and do anything to get elected. You know, I'm oftentimes very disappointed when I see that, whether it be my opponent on the Democratic side, who I hope to face in the fall, or whether it be my opponent right now in this election, their campaign is being so slanderous and throwing around so many deceits. The fact of saying that I think that Hillary Clinton's more suited for the job than President Trump, the fact that I'm a pro-choice candidate, the fact that I believe there was a rumor thrown around that I kill kittens in my spare time. At the end of the day, people will really say and do anything to try and get elected. And so it's been a very disappointing and trying time to realize that the culture of politics in America is very sick, and it needs to be treated. And I believe the only way we can do that is by electing different kind of people to go to Washington, D.C. Because as the parable always says, the definition of insanity, if you keep doing what you've always done and expect a different result, that is the definition of insanity.
Well, that leads right into our 12th question. If elected, you could be in the minority party in the House. Can you name a policy where you could work across the aisle to bring policy change to the people of the congressional district?
Absolutely. You know, something that I believe Republicans and Democrats share is a willingness to have the greatest infrastructure in the world. I believe that, I don't believe, history shows us that at one point, the infrastructure in our country was the envy of the entire world, but how far we have fallen since then. Just driving over here, I saw how many potholes were on our roads. I see how many of our bridges are in decay and needing of repair. And I see that we need more hospitals, especially in our western counties. We just need digital infrastructure to make sure that we're able to get internet out there so people and students are able to do their homework. I heard a story from a constituent there who said that she has to drive her students to the McDonald's and sit out in the parking lot so they can log onto their Wi-Fi just so their children can complete their homework. And so I don't think that is a partisan issue. I hope that it wouldn't be, but that's something I'd be willing to reach across the aisle for to try and get more funding for our infrastructure, especially here in Western North Carolina.
Thank you. Linda Bennett has touted her endorsements from prominent D.C. politicians.
Has she really?
Yeah, like Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows and Ted Cruz. whereas you criticized her for the very same endorsements. Is it valuable to have ready-made Republican allies upon entering Congress?
I don't believe so. You know, I think that when the majority of politicians get elected, they move. I think we're in the 116th Congress right now. But when we move into the 117th Congress, which I hope to be a part of, I believe actually we're further along in which Congress we're in. But at the end of the day, I believe that when everyone goes there, they want to do what's best for America. So whether I'm in the minority party or the majority party, I believe I'm going to find a lot of allies on both sides of the aisle who are going to be willing to work on America's benefit. You know, I have been offered several endorsements from outside congressmen, from different senators, from different PACs, and I either turn them down or I don't tout them because that's not something that I think is important. Because they can't vote in Western North Carolina, they're not important to Western North Carolina, and they can't make any real change for Western North Carolina. So the only endorsements I care about are from constituents right here in this district. People like sheriffs, people like commissioners, people like treasurers, and people from all over the local scale of elected officials and business owners and just everyday people of North Carolina 11. I believe that those are the endorsements that matter because those are the people that I want to represent. I don't care about DC swamp politics, which are going to chain me to them and tell me that I owe them some kind of favor.
So that kind of leads to the next question. How would you build bridges with these politicians, which you would need to cooperate with to get legislation passed?
One of two ways. I plan to be a very dynamic figure up in Congress. I want to be able to put my name behind something that carries some weight, especially for the people of Western North Carolina, so that I can be an important power dealer when I get up there, so that I can have more ability to affect change for the people of Western North Carolina. You know, I've never struggled to make friends, and I don't think that that will be any different up in Congress, especially when you're talking about a class of people who truly just want to make a difference. They want to make their mark on history, and they want to make sure that the people they represent are treated with the best shake they can get. And so I believe if we all go up there with the same mindset, we'll have no trouble finding friends.
Okay, and the final question.
Okay.
How do you think you are the best candidate to face Democratic nominee Mo Davis?
As I said in the very beginning of this, and I might go over 1 minute on this question, I apologize if I do, but as I said in the very beginning of this, I am here and ready to show up for the job interview. I am in Haywood County here in Waynesville. I am in the backyard of my opponent, and she still doesn't even show up. It's as if she just wants to spit in the face of the people who she wants to represent in Washington, D.C., because how arrogant is it to just not show up and tell your views, to tell the people what you believe in, when at the end of the day, those are the people that you're going up to represent. Your voting card belongs to the people of Western North Carolina. And if you're not even willing to go before the people of Western North Carolina and answer their questions, especially the questions that the local paper in her hometown have touted, it makes me wonder, are you going to be able to walk up and face a Democratic JAG officer who prosecuted terrorists in Guantanamo Bay? You know, him and I may disagree on policy, but Guantanamo Bay is not a kid glove place. And I'll tell you, I am willing to face my Democratic opponent to defend the cause of to defeat the cause of socialism and defend conservatism on the stage. I'm not afraid of a debate, and I don't shy away, and I'm not going to cower behind endorsements or PAC money that I think are going to just hand me the keys to the city. At the end of the day, I'm willing to stand up and face whoever the Democrats want to throw at me, whether it be in this election or in 2022. Because I am passionate about what I believe. As I said in the beginning, I'm not sitting here reciting some rehearsed lines. I'm relying on careful study. I'm relying on what all I've learned, and I'm definitely relying on what I truly believe in my heart. I can deliver a message with passion and with an authority that comes because this is something that I truly believe. And I don't think that's something that my opponent will be able to do. I believe Mo Davis would wipe the floor with her and make conservatives and conservatism look weak. And that is not something that I'm willing to let happen.
Thank you. Do you have a closing statement you'd like to deliver?
I would, and this is not one of wanting to attack my opponent or wanting to attack, my current opponent or the Democratic nominee. My closing statement is one of hope. All of us here in Western North Carolina came to these mountains, one, for their scenic beauty, and two, for the mountain values that we all share. That is something that I want to take up to Washington, D.C., because I believe that if we take these small mountain town values to Washington, we apply them to things like our deficit, to foreign policy, to local politics. I believe that is going to make a difference, that people will be able to be palpable. They'll be able to taste it. They'll be able to see it. I want to encourage the American people to not continue this partisan divide that drives us all apart, but rather to bring us all together. We're all Americans. When people ask me if I'm a Democrat or a Republican, the first thing, I just respond that I'm an American first and foremost. I'm here because this is something that I'm very passionate about, and I want to make sure that we have the future promise, that the American dream is not stolen from us. And that's why I'm running for office, because I believe that throughout the different difficulties I've had to overcome in my life and the different pressures I've had to overcome in my life, I believe it prepared me to walk into this lion's den of DC swamp politics that I think has really just robbed the Americans of their trust in their government. That's not something that I ever want to see perpetrated and continued. I want the American people to sit back and say, you know what? I'm glad that Madison Cawthorn's supporting me, or I'm glad that the congressman from District 6 in North Carolina is representing me, because they have my best interest at heart. And that's why I'm running for Congress here, because I care about the people of Western North Carolina. I'm not doing this job to enrich myself. I'm not doing this job to give myself power. I'm doing this job to help my fellow man. Christ first loved me, and so because of that, I think it's my duty to love my fellow neighbor, whether they're Muslim, Hindu, Jewish. I don't care what their skin color is, their race, or their background. I'm here to represent all people, and especially the people of Western North Carolina. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you